Okay, we will call to order the public board meeting of August 27th, 2025 at 1:00 p.m. I am going to ask Trustee Buga for the land acknowledgement this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair. I really wanted to do the land acknowledgement today as we begin a new school year. We recognize the trauma that comes with this time of year for a lot of families, but we also recognize where we're going together in the future. We've had a bit of a crazy summer as far as weather goes, but this land has provided. It continues to provide. We have a beautiful day today, and we move forward with positivity as we open up another new school year. A lot of our teachers and our staff are back already, and our students will start to join us starting tomorrow. And we're looking really forward to an excellent 25-26 school year coming up. And I would also like to acknowledge that Sturgeon Public Schools respectfully acknowledges that we teach, learn, and grow together on Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. We honor and respect the history, languages, ceremonies, and cultures of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have called this land home for countless generations. We recognize the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, Nakota Sioux, and Inuit for their care, love, and stewardship of this place. We are grateful for those who share their knowledge with us and help foster a respectful relationship with all of our relatives on this land. We are committed to understanding the harms done in the name of education and continuing to learn to honor the true spirit of Treaty 6 as a promise of friendship, collaboration, and peaceful alliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Buga. I'm hoping everybody's had an opportunity already to look at the agenda. And I'm calling for an approval of the agenda at this time. Trustee Murray Elliott, thank you very much. And approval of the, all in favor, please. Carried unanimously. I'm hoping everybody's also had an opportunity to read the minutes from the June 18th, 2025 board meeting. Any additions, deletions, corrections to be noted? Seeing none, can I have an approval of the minutes of June 18th? Trustee Dwyer, thank you so much. All in favor? Carried unanimously, thanks. No business arising from the minutes. Presentations, delegations, nothing. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 7, action items. 7.1, the appointment of substitute returning officer for the 2025 general election. Superintendent Warren.
Thank you, Chair. I will turn this over to the Associate Superintendent, Corporate Services.
Thank you, Board Chair, Superintendent, Board Chair. So Superintendent Corporate Services, Sean Nicholson. Just with the shift in some staffing changes, we need to assign a substitute returning officer, just in case something happened to me. Hopefully not, but if you got hit by a bus or anything like that, there would be somebody to replace me and make sure that the division election process is running smoothly. So we have identified our Associate Superintendent of HR is that person in this report, and we just put it forward for approval.
Can I call for a motion, please? Trustee Buga?
I move that the Board of Trustees approve Mary Lacroix, Associate Superintendent, Human Resources, as substitute returning officer for the 2025 general election.
All in favor? Carried unanimously. Should have opened it for discussion because that's a new one for me, Mary. 7.2, Policy 7, Board Operations, Appendix D, Trustee Remuneration. Superintendent Warren.
Thank you, Board Chair. I will turn this over to the Associate Superintendent, Corporate Services. Board Policy 7 was just reviewed by the board, but there were recent legislative changes, just some changes to Government of Alberta. And so the trustee remuneration Appendix D has been updated, but I'm going to turn it over to Sean.
Thank you, Superintendent. So Superintendent Corporate Services, Sean Nicholson. This is more of an administrative change. Oh. Must have turned off. This is more of an administrative change just to align with policy and the fact that the board follows the Government of Alberta travel and expense policy. Just as a reminder, the board recently reduced their mileage rate to follow this policy. So this is just to align with currently what they have posted.
Questions for clarification from the board? Trustee Buga?
Thank you, Chair. Just out of curiosity, now that we're following the Government of Alberta rate for trustees, just to confirm that this does align with what our staff allowance is, and how often does Government of Alberta generally increase or change, and will that have budgetary implications?
Yes.
Thank you. So yes, it will have budgetary implications. Obviously, if the mileage rate increases, then that means we're paying more for mileage. And alternatively, departments and schools will have to figure out how to make that work within the resources they have already been allocated. In my time in the education sector, which is probably 7 or 8 years now, I've only seen it change. This is probably the second time. So it doesn't change too often. And then, sorry, what was your?
Does it align with the superintendent and staff?
Yes. And yes, this is exactly the same policy our staff are following. We are making a shift as of September 2nd, just to update the policy as well too. Or the min procedure, sorry.
Any other questions for clarification? Seeing none, can I call for a motion, please? Trustee Gibbons?
I recommend that the Board of Trustees approve Policy 7, Board Operations Appendix 6, Trustee Remuneration, with recommended changes as presented at the August 27th, 2025 Public Board Meeting. Oh, my apologies, Appendix D.
All right. Would anybody like to speak for or against the motion? Seeing none, I will call the question that the Board of Trustees approve Policy 7, Board Operations, Appendix D, Trustee Remuneration with recommended changes as presented at the August 27th, 2025 Public Board Meeting. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 7.3, Policy 19, Welcoming, Caring, Respectful, Inclusive, Safe, and Healthy Environments. Superintendent Warren?
Thank you, Chair. So Policy 19 has been updated to meet new legislative changes. And so we're part of Bill 27 and Bill 29. So we had to look at the board's two policies, and this is one of them, 19, that were impacted by those changes, and recommendations have come forward. Again, this was over the summer. And so as we're writing this, ensuring that your policies do align with legislation.
Are there any questions for clarification? So Trustee Murray Elliott?
Just a comment. I really like the wording of this policy, and it's a very important policy, but it can also be very tricky. As a board member, I have been the target of bullying and harassment in the past, and I have witnessed the same towards other board members. We have had board members who have either been complicit or simply chose to look the other way. It's not adhered to, it's words.
Your mic turned off.
So if the trustees don't follow this policy, we can't really expect anyone else in the division to either. So I challenge the Sturgeon School Division Board of Trustees and any incoming trustees to set an example for the entire division by adhering to this policy and putting aside petty differences, which can be detrimental and expensive, and work together for the benefit of the division. Thanks.
Would anybody like to make the motion? Trustee Buka?
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the recommended changes to Policy 19, welcome, caring, respectful, inclusive, safe, and healthy environments as presented at the August 27th, 2025 public board meeting.
Would anybody like to speak for or against the motion? Trustee Buka?
I would like to speak for it. I feel like this policy, even with all the government changes and legislative updates, hasn't seen a lot of change, meaning that we had a very thorough policy in the first place. This is one of the ones I believe that we look at every year. And as trustees, to me, I felt like we were following it. And I expect all of our staff and our whole division to really embody this policy as well. So I would, I suppose, reiterate Trustee Murray Elliott's comments that everybody, especially the board, should model these values for our division and our staff and our students and our stakeholders to know that this is what we represent. So I will be supporting this motion.
Would anybody else like to speak for or against? Seeing none, I will call the question that the Board of Trustees approve recommended changes to Board Policy 19, welcoming, caring, respectful, inclusive, safe, and healthy environments as presented at the August 27th, 2025 public board meeting. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Policy, so we're number 7.4, Policy 20, Sexual Orientation and Gender Identities. Superintendent Warren.
Thank you, Chair. So again, as Trustee Buka did allude to, these two policies are always reviewed annually by this board since they were developed, and they are very thorough policies. I think the division has been very dedicated to this for a long time. We want inclusive and caring environments. So this one is around sexual orientation and gender identities. This policy was impacted by the recent changes, again, Bill 27 and Bill 29, and that we were required to have these created and in place for September 1st, the beginning of the school year. So there are some minor changes to the language, just about ensuring that our parents are part of the discussion, and just about if talking about name changes, any types of pronouns, etc. And so we had to look at it again. The board has had it for a little bit, but not very long because it is new. So again, administration is prepared to take any questions based on the recommended changes.
Questions for clarification at this time? Trustee Pequin.
What happens if a board doesn't put this policy into place by September 1st, which is the legislated time we have to put it into?
Well, I guess you could say if it's a policy, that's the board's policy, but the admin procedure, because we're required to do those things by law, it would be an admin procedure if the policy didn't change, if you left your policy wording the same. But to action it, I guess that's a question for your board chair to talk about. I don't know what the ramifications of board not adopting.
So as we've had discussion at this table before, legislation trumps board policy. We can say what we like, but if the government has legislated action in contradiction to our policy, legislation will trump it always. So this is more of a formality. Can I ask for the motion, please? Trustee Murray Elliott,
I move that the Board of Trustees approve recommended changes to Board Policy 20, Sexual Orientation and Gender Identities, as presented at the August 27th, 2025 Public Board Meeting.
would anybody like to speak for or against the motion at this time? Trustee Murray Elliott,
I speak for this motion. I think this policy is well worded. It enables us to comply with the legislation and also offers assurances to our families that they will be involved in decisions.
would anybody else like to speak for or against? Trustee Gibbons?
I'm going to speak for this motion and appreciate the work that senior admin did to ensure that the gaps between our policy and legislation were attended to. So thank you.
Trustee Buga?
I will reluctantly speak in favor of this motion. Again, I will say thank you very much to our administrative staff on the wording and the way that this policy was written, understanding that we need to follow legislation and we need to be in alignment with our government and the Education Act. And I will just read again from the background of this memo that's included in the board package, that this revised policy maintains the board's commitment to supporting the rights, safety, and well-being of students and staff, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Updates were made to ensure that the policy is aligned with the new legislation and that it accurately reflects the board's obligation under provincial law. I believe that our staff will continue to support students and involve families in decision-making and the important parts of student lives. For that reason, I will be voting in favor, and I believe that our division will continue their great work of supporting families and students. Thanks.
I would also speak in favor. Sturgeon Public School Divisions has always valued parental input and stakeholder feedback. I believe that we had a policy in place that protected our students before this, and I think that this will continue to protect students as well as acknowledging the importance of parental involvement in the process of educating our students. We've always valued parental involvement and we will continue to do so. Seeing no further comments, I will call the question that the Board of Trustees approve recommended changes to Board Policy 20, Sexual Orientation and Gender Identities, as presented at the August 27th, 2025 Public Board Meeting. All in favor? All opposed? Carried by 5-1 vote. And we will now move on to number 8, administrative reports. 8.1 Summer School Enrollment Summary 2025. Superintendent Warren.
Thank you, Chair. At this time of year, we bring back our numbers from our summer school and report on what enrollment was like during summer school. I will turn this over to the Deputy Superintendent and to Jason Wicks, who was our principal for summer school for this past summer.
Thank you for that, Superintendent. Chair. Really, the meaning of this report will be carried and held and highlighted by Jason Wicks. Very thankful that Jason stepped into the role for us for the first time, but a long-standing admin and principal who's done this work before. So Jason, how would you like to highlight?
Jason Wicks, principal of the summer school and also principal of Guthrie School. Thank you, Chair, for inviting me. We had a pretty successful summer school. Our enrollments are generally about the same as we've had over the last 3 years. Our Our credits were a little bit up. We completed a little few more credits than we usually do. We're above the average of what we've been doing the last couple of years. Some of the things that were exciting that we tried this year, we expanded our phys ed offering. We actually had a 3-day overnight camp down to Nordegg, and the kids got to go do some whitewater rafting, and they did some horseback riding, and they did some hiking, and they did some really, really exciting things. And they came back with some pretty big smiles, and it was a really good start for grade 10 for some of these students who are new to Sturgeon Comp, and it was a good chance to make some new friends and bond with some kids that they maybe had never met before. So that was a positive start, and it gave some kids those credits, and it gave them some room in their timetable to do other things. COM is also obviously a big part of summer school, and we enrolled about 174 courses this year, and we completed most of those. So that also gives our students going into high school room in their timetables to pursue other studies, and it's an important part of programming across the division, both at Redwater and Sturgeon Comp. The other thing that we set out to do this year was to create a baseline of courses. So we've got some content now organized. We've got some of our teachers did some work to make sure that they kind of fit the format of doing a core course in 4 weeks, which is pretty intense. So that group of courses is now built. It's accessible, and it's accessible for other teachers and other types of learning contexts to use if they want. It would also be available for new teachers to take a look at courses or courses that they've never taught before, and grab those, copy them, put them into Google Classroom and use them. So those are the things that we did well this year. I learned a lot, and we'll do a little bit better next year, and we'll keep growing. And I hope it's an important part of what we do is programming for our high school kids, and it continues to be successful.
Thank you so much. Any questions for, yes, Trustee Murray Elliott and then Trustee Pequin.
I really like this report, and good job. I think you did an awesome job this year. Quick question, kind of 2 parts. I see on here this HCS 3000 and 3010, and I didn't know what that was, so I looked it up, and I see that those are workplace safety courses. And I'm just wondering, is that something we offered before? I know in some of our communications with other stakeholders, they had requested that we give our students workplace safety. So I'm really happy to see that there. So I don't know if this is new or not. And part 2 of that is that something that's like a prereq for our Building Futures students, where they have to go through these before they can be on site? Or
Okay, so we offer those courses for a couple of reasons. It bundles really nicely with COM, because COM is 3 credits, and that we give these 2 credits out, so you kind of get a 5 credit bundle. The other advantage is it's the prerequisite for work experience. So if a student wants to do work experience in grade 10, then if they can get the HCS courses out of the way in summer, then we can get them geared up, and we get them right into work experience first term. So it helps the students in a couple different ways, and just a couple extra credits is good, and it gears them up for that work experience. And that's an important part of high school for lots of our students.
well, and that's great that we're offering our students that opportunity. So thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Trustee Pequin.
So I know with lots of kiddos, their work experience is just wrapping up, some of them yesterday. Do those credits sometimes change then, like from this report? Because work experience is 1 credit per 25 hours, I think. So this might be out a little bit. And summer school is funded differently, is it not?
Superintendent Warren.
I will turn this over to the deputy. Yes, so it is called term 4, and summer school is different because we actually can do it by credit, but up to a limit. But I will also, and I'm going to let also Mr. Conrad speak about our history, just about when you're talking about work experience, our pre-courses, because they have been around for a while. They're not necessarily new, but even as we said, it's a prereq when our kids are doing work experience, but when do our kids take it?
Deputy.
Thank you. Yes, to just reinforce what Jason said here, we have been offering that HCS 3000, but we are looking at enhancing it from that feedback that we have from community, but it is an absolute prereq for work experience, and it's one of the first things we get young people in high school to do, so that opens those doors for them. I have connected with Building Futures, and while if they haven't taken that, they're taking that right away as well. But just also rest assured, the Building Futures team is, the response back was significantly more enhanced because it's very work safety, and that's one of the, like the first series of lessons that they have is exactly what does it mean to be safe on the job site. So I appreciate you asking that. And then Superintendent, you did clarify this, but just to put a fine point, CEU funding used to be part of our everyday language. It's long gone, except in summer school, and up to 10 credits. We can receive, and it's published in the funding manual, but there's lots of caveats. Like, for example, a child read as a course, and we do that because we want them to do better. So we do allow kids to take again a course they did not do as well as they wanted to, but we don't receive extra funding for that. It has to be a new credit that we receive funding for within that. So there's other limits too. But
Trustee Buga.
Thank you, Chair. Pardon me. Thank you for the report, and seeing the numbers increase, that is an incredible increase. Can you just tell me a bit? I believe that we do accept outside students and enrollment from other divisions. I know that our programming is actually a bit unique, and I think sought after as far as the online content and the quality of education we have for our summer programs. Can you tell me if there's a ratio that you can kind of ballpark on how many outside enrollments from Sturgeon?
Mr. Wicks.
I'm going to ask
Deputy
Mr. Wicks to be
Superintendent?
thinking about a ratio while I give a quick answer. One of the reasons it actually just relates to the conversation we had about CEU, because we can receive funding for young people outside, it's not that block funding with us, that has allowed us to continue to have external registrations and still receive the funding we need to make the program work. Was that enough time, Mr. Wicks, to come up with a rough idea of how many out of division kids we have?
Well, I think this year we maybe had a few more because we didn't close off our registrations as fast as other schools did. So that was, we had a whole bunch of registrations kind of at the end of June, and people were shopping around because other schools had shut down their registrations. And we kind of had an experiment going there to see kind of what that might look like. So I would say that probably 15% maybe of our registrations this year were out of division, and we had a pretty wide spread of registrations from all over the province. The caveat that we put with those registrations was to maintain some type of integrity of our programming. They had to come in and do their midterms and their finals face to face. And then some of our teachers also added additional assessments on there. Like, so our English teachers made sure that she saw the kids once every week, right? So they were doing a lot of their assessments face to face. So we had some integrity. So we knew the kids were doing the work. So that kind of limited a little bit where we could get kids from. We did have some folks from Grand Prairie. We did have some folks from Calgary drive up to do their assessments and do all those things. So there is a great need, it seems, in the middle of June for kids who maybe are struggling or not have the right course at the right time to look for those opportunities. It did cause additional challenges for infrastructure and tech and all those kinds of things, because if you kind of think of our technology as kind of a walled garden, once you're a Sturgeon kid, you're inside the wall, right? And it's easy to move you from school to school to school because you're inside the wall. If you're a kid from Grand Prairie, then you're outside the wall and we got to get you into the wall, right? And so it's a little bit harder for the tech part of it to make it work and work well. So those were some things we learned, and we'll definitely be considering going forward with some of those things and see what the cost was and see what the revenue was and see what the benefit to the students was, and we'll go from there. That answers the question. Yeah.
Trustee Buga has another one for you.
Yeah, for sure. It did trigger just a follow-up question. And I understand that this is kind of a test and see and reevaluate after this, you know, everything wraps up.
Yeah.
Just curious, what do we have capacity for growth as it stands now? Or is this something that the funding would change significantly in order to grow? Because I feel like that increase was substantial this year in the numbers, and whether, you know, we would, is there a cap that we'd have to do to maintain where we are, or do we have space to grow?
Superintendent Warren?
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Vice Chair. Great question. I am going to turn it over to the deputy again, but the other thing is when we look at that, remember, because it's CEU funded, because it's the only term that's truly, it's based on credits. Again, it's not a full enrollment, it's not a whole child, so it does give you flexibility. We always want to build capacity and try to continue to grow. And so it's how do we grow respectfully, because we want to make sure that it's actually what's being asked of and it actually meets the needs of what people are asking for. But you have more flexibility because it's more about one course or a couple credits, or so it's not like it's a block funding of a child, right? So it gives you a lot more flexibility and it's a little bit easier to grow, but it's how you grow because you want to grow intentionally. So that's why we were very purposeful this year, and I will turn it over to the deputy just to add more on that.
And all I would add is, you know, the specific at what point can we grow more, not more. We're very cognizant that this program is first and foremost for students, and as Sturgeon, for Sturgeon students is what I meant to say. But we do want a robust program, and if we meaningfully can offer such to students outside our division, we'd like to continue that. But our full answer in terms of how much more can we grow or whatnot, I could not answer at this time. We have more work on our learnings to do.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you so much, Mr. Wicks, for the presentation, for the report. We'll move on to 8.2, Communications Report, July and August 2025. Superintendent Warren.
Thank you, Chair. I will turn this over to the deputy.
Thank you. For your information is a highlight of what the communications team did through summer. And please don't be misled by the brevity of the report. They actually lifted a lot of big rocks. Is that the word? They did a lot of work in the background. So the public work that you'll see is the graphics and the work promoting our collegiate school, which is exciting. And of course, I'm sure or hope you saw our push to say, hey, this is the exciting work of being a trustee. Come and run as a trustee. So that was a public work, but I just wanted to highlight, I was here through summer and seeing the work that they were doing to frame up the coming year, right? To pre-seed and pre-build posts for schools to use, because we do need the actual life, the things that are happening in our school to get to our parents so they know what's going on. But this team supports the schools in doing that. This team helps them understand what it means to make a post, when to do the post, and some of that work. And so a lot of the summer work was that. So it doesn't have as many, well, there's not as many pictures of kids. You saw those in the summer school report, but I just want to reassure you that it was actually a very productive summer. Prepared to take questions?
Questions for the deputy? Trustee Buga.
Thank you, Chair. I really like this report. I remember one of the first things I asked about when I became trustee was that I wanted to make sure that this was kept being brought back to us, because I wanted updates. I wanted to see how things are connecting to our plan and our goals. And I really appreciate having these updates, because we're not all on all the social medias. We're not in all the communities. So I really appreciate having the summary of where we're targeting, because it is part of our budget. We do want to make sure that marketing is important for school divisions, but it's also something that we know it's got to be a balance. Marketing's important, but it is not our priority. Students are. And so bringing this report back, and it really demonstrates how this leads to the goals we set in the boardroom, and it furthers our work as well. So thank you for continuing to bring this report.
Thank you, Trustee Buga. Moving on to 8.3, Superintendent Report. Superintendent Warren.
Thank you, Chair. Shauna Warren, Superintendent. Again, provided as it is provided every month for the board is my superintendent report, and as was updated after the February board work and evaluation and my evaluation, sorry, not board evaluation, superintendent evaluation last February, the 3 goals are also highlighted throughout. So it's based on the SLQS and board goals that were created for myself.
Questions, comments for the superintendent? Seeing none, we will move on to 8.4, Administrative Procedure 2.1, Organizational Structure. Superintendent Warren.
Chair. Thank you. So this past spring, policy 215, the org chart was, I thought I turned it off. There we go. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Shauna Warren, Superintendent. So admin procedure 201, organizational structure. It is replacing the policy that was rescinded. And so we will notice that it's now an AP, but it also has a new chart. You will notice a couple changes in our org chart. So the division principal is now under me. And the reason for that, in long discussions as a senior team as to what's the best fit to ensure we are removing all silos. We are a small rural school division. There's no such thing as departments. We're a team. And so how do we align positions so we are not siloed? And the reason division principal has been placed under answering to me is because that role, because principals answer to me, it's also a division principal, so it answers to me. That role also is very targeted about certain initiatives that we are doing right now. So part of our TAVE, which is all of our trades and skills, and you look at our flight school, we also have that position. The division principal will also be supporting our brand new announcements, whether it's Morinville Public, our beginning communications, supporting that in a new school, or the Gibbons replacement school, those type of things. So that's the reason, but mainly it's because principals do answer to me. I am responsible for them and to them. And so that was one thought. Of course, that position does align with everybody and connects with everybody because they're like the conduit to cross departments. The other thing you will notice, which has not quite happened, we are moving forward again, that the deputy superintendent and the associate of HR are working with communications, but communications will be moving under HR. And so it will be the associate superintendent of HR who will oversee marketing and communications. And I will turn it over to one of them if they would just like to speak to that as to even part of our reason, looking at, recruit, when you look at HR and the vision setting, et cetera, and a good fit. And I don't think I had any other changes. I think that was it. But again, this is now an AEP and it is replacing policy 250.
Sorry, Deputy Superintendent.
John, Deputy Superintendent. Some of the rationale, and we didn't coordinate, the associate of HR and I on who was going to speak first, but one of the rationale of moving marketing and communications is just that. The marketing is significant in terms of staff recruitment. You see all of the job postings and all of that work is significant, continues to be significant. That was well aligned. Also, human resources is center point for many things like Public School Works is a new program we're working on. Hour Zero, which is all of the how we handle through emergencies. You guys are well aware of Hour Zero. I don't have to tell you that, but all of that comes with communication scripts, talking to the public. And so communications being aligned with that was also a wonderful alignment. Those are some of the highlights that I was thinking of. I'm not sure what the associate wants to share as well.
Sorry, thank you, Deputy. I believe that you have covered all of the reasons that we discussed for that. Thank you so much.
Trustee Buga.
I'm happy to see this come forward, just because it was a policy and now it is an admin procedure. And I really appreciate that you accept our questions and our inquiries into how things are moving and happening to make sure that the division is running efficiently. My question is, with that communications and marketing shift, we've seen a lot of really positive things coming out about our schools and those all-star teams, and some of those really unique marketing programs that we've come to see over the last couple of years. Just ensuring that that is still happening, that with a move into HR out of kind of more of the school-based staff and education, just making sure that those don't get lost.
Superintendent Warren?
Thank you. And it's a great question, Trustee Buga. So just as the year in review summary you get, and then the plan for the year, all of that remains. And again, as I said, we're a small rural school division. And so our departments cross over and the goals are the goals. And so all of the goals of marketing and communication is just that. And there still be, as you know, when the ed plan, when the team is working on the ed plan, communications has to be in all those meetings. I'll use the example of SIS Power School. It crosses over so much. So communications. So even though we say certain positions fall under, we are very much, it's a team approach. And so any goals, strategic planning that's set, they don't go away. It's how is it's captured, and then how are we making sure that it aligns with putting them under a different department. But again, it's our connection between all of us that makes sure that we don't have any of that stuff drop off. But I know I have lots of confidence in our two leaders right here. They will ensure that all the good work and the strategic planning will remain in place, and we may just expand or shift.
Trustee Dwyer?
Yeah, I appreciate looking at this organizational chart today. I guess my the comment more is that in the very near future we have a new board coming in, and I think it'd be great to be able to present this organization chart right at the beginning so they understand. And even today, explaining some of the changes in it, I think is very important for this board. And I don't think we did that in a big way. And I think a learning is here is that this is an important thing to look at. And when it changes, it's important for the board to understand that change and why. So I hope that continues into our next board and maybe opens up a little bit better than how we treated it. So thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, we'll move to 8.5 Administrative Procedure 831 Religious Education and Instruction. Superintendent Warren?
Thank you, Chair. As the board was moving to the GTEC model, as discussed, as mentioned when at the June 18th public board meeting, when the Board of Trustees rescinded policy 800, it was administration communicated that to the board that of course the new could not be moved to an AP until the policy was rescinded. So AP 831, it is now an AP instead of a policy. And again, we are guided very much by legislation here. And so it follows the requirements under the Education Act.
Questions, comments? 831, 8.5 on the agenda item. Trustee Dwyer?
Sure. Yes, and I would request that our board allow this one to go to the next term, the next board. And the reason for that is the community has opened up to they're checking in with the Alberta government right now on this document that was created at the beginning of Camilla. And they'd appreciate if they had some time to do that the Alberta government is looking into it, I guess, and other matters and other ways. And they'd appreciate, our community would appreciate the time for Camilla to let that go forward and the next board handle this.
So just to be clear, Trustee Dwyer, this is just the admin procedure. The policy was rescinded in June.
I know.
And so, yeah, this is just the new admin procedure that aligns with the legislation. So you're asking for, so the admin procedure is just for information. So
That's
there's
right.
nothing to approve or reject here. It's just, it can be changed. It could be changed for next board meeting if that's what had to happen. So the
Okay.
policy was rescinded.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I guess I'll just put it in a different direction. Sorry, in my own mind, I don't think we formally did that, but probably maybe I missed something. Just give this a chance in the Camilla area of in the future, in the next
Yeah.
board, and deal with it and try to get an opportunity to see if that communication and signed letter can be found.
Trustee Buga?
Yeah, this admin procedure is new and it does continue to allow that. And so I was actually going to say that I'm happy to see this because there was some concern that when we rescinded that policy, that something would get lost and we would lose that community voice that is, in that region. So I'm happy to see this administrative procedure come into existence so that there is a procedure in place on how to do that when should the community want to pursue it. So
Yeah, I'm sorry I approached that at the beginning a little bit wrong. I was under a different mind frame
Yeah,
that we
this-
hadn't officially done this yet. And went from the policy to an administrative procedure.
Yeah.
But if so, that's fine. Just want to get clear that this is very important to the Camilla community. And we need to make sure that allow that properly to finish and go through the efforts that the community is doing and trying to do this.
And I would say that wherever there is a concern that is prominent and important to a community, it should never be lost.
That's right.
And similar to policy 20, sexual orientation and gender identity, the legislation will always trump our policy, no matter what we want to say as policy, whether we as trustees approve of it or not. And so legislation protects religious education and will likely always protect religious education. So I think the admin procedure can always be modified. And should something change legislatively or we're given a directive from the government, we always have to adhere to those.
And great. And that was just my concern. It was more of
Yeah.
a comment to bring up that we're all thinking in the right direction here. And if something does change, if something comes forward, that it's appreciated and looked at in the proper way.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we'll go to 8.6 administrative procedures, updates in response to the Education Act amendments. Superintendent Warren?
Thank you, Chair. I will be turning it over to the deputy to fill in any gaps here. I'm just going to remind the board and the public, yes, these are admin procedures. So if you look at our AP on even developing admin procedures, we have a whole process for that, just like you for your policies. Look for public input, etc. It's important. It's the foundation of what we do. The legislation, when it was released, some of the Education Act still has not been completely updated. Bill 51 still only sits as a ministerial order. It is not in the Education Act. So I'm just letting you know that ministerial orders, that's how they start. And then the updates, the Education Act often follow. And Bill 51 has not been included. So you have to go and look for the actual ministerial order. These admin procedures, they were worked on over the summer and there are quite a few changes. We brought it to our admin at our first admin council, which is like 5 days back. It was just this past Friday. So we wanted our principals, because again, this has to be operationalized in our schools. So we asked them to look at it. We asked for ideas. I really appreciate it. I will just echo what Trustee Buga said. We are an inclusive environment. We care very much about all. We want safe, caring, welcoming, inclusive, respectful environments for working and learning. And that is all people. And that's why we added who those policies apply to your policy. Now, with our admin procedures, these are our draft. Again, I'm going to say draft because there may still be some minor changes. Because we have to operationalize this. And if we get input back from admin or whoever's looking at it, and we are like, maybe we could have better wording, maybe that doesn't quite match what we're doing, that's what will happen. So I'm just letting you know that because the Education Act does not capture quite everything. So I'm going to turn it over to our deputy superintendent, but you will notice there are quite a few. And there's actually a couple that are actually new. And I don't think there was anything else I actually wanted to say, except if someone, even when we talk about some of the library resources, we're still the operationalizing of how to do that. We're still trying to finalize. And again, We don't do this in silos. We do this with a process. We want input from our schools because this needs to be actioned as well. And as we look at, as you know, many of our even forms we fill out, they are digitized, they're done online. We have to make sure that it makes sense to parents. How do we do this? What does the wording look like? Because we also want it to capture what our foundational beliefs are. And with that, I will turn it over to our deputy because there's quite a few. I hope you had a chance to read through them all.
Thank you, John Conrad, Deputy Superintendent. Do want to start where I heard our superintendent highlight as well. We hear from the board aligned with our own value to be inclusive, caring, welcoming, supportive of all families, of all types in our schools. What you see in front of you here is we started with our current administrative procedures, and this is our attempt to align with the two Educational Amendment Acts, which are Bill 2751, the Fairness and Safety in Sport Act, and the Ministerial Order on School Library Standards. It's worth highlighting. I'm sure you've read it a lot, but the front matter of the memo is really worth trying to keep in mind because parts of these occur across our APs. And one of the next rounds of revision will be for us to say, well, we edited these 5 APs that we had in place because they touched on these things. But now that we're hearing feedback from teachers or principals, maybe we need to reduce those to 3 or not. So right now we went through and made sure that wherever this was mentioned in any one of Sturgeon's APs, we aligned it to the clear and new legislation, knowing that we have said similar things in more than one place. And one of the revisions we want to do is make it a bit more clear where to find all of this. So first, I do want to highlight, though, right on the memo, the Bill 27 and Bill 51 were focused on 3 areas, I would say. The first, that we are required under legislation to notify parents when a student under 16 requests a different name or pronoun related to gender identity. After that age, we are required to notify parents. We don't need their approval, but we are still required to notify if they're within our school systems. For any instruction around explicit gender identity, sexual orientation, or human sexuality, we are now mandated to provide an opt-in mechanism for families, not the old opt-out. Another part of this is when we talk about emergencies that happen, we are required to have very clear and robust procedures that say when this will trigger and when it's triggered, what we follow to ensure students have the right to an in-person education, or if in-person cannot be provided in another school or another site, how we're still meeting all of our educational obligations. That's the big picture of the first group of edits that go across many APs. The second part was around safety in sport, and it applies to older gender-based sport competitions. So students age 12 and older, U13 and older, when there are female leagues, and there are female leagues, then the people that are competing within those leagues meet the gender or female at birth requirement, the sex at birth. That was safety in sport. There's some other things around that for sure, but that's just the highlight on that. And the school libraries one really talks about sexually explicit, non-explicit content that are in our libraries, and really tries to make a distinguishing between content that kids could walk in and sign out, but walk in and sign out sort of free, versus content that may be brought forward aligned with teaching objectives and whatnot, and provided that we were doing the opt-in mechanism, we could use those resources because there's an adult in the room, a teacher meeting objectives, versus resources that simply are on a shelf in a school library or on a shelf in a classroom library. So those are the core. There's details, but that's the core of what all of our APs had to address. I thought I might comment a bit AP by AP, but broadly or no, I'm not sure. For example, the at-home learning, aside from There's lots of how we're going to do this. I didn't have a lot to say on that. That's just to be very clear with our public how we're going to work in emergencies. Our emergency preparedness, we already had that AP. Very similar, relates to that. How are we going to ensure in-person learning? If we can't, how are we going to ensure all of our obligations are met? Similar with the health issues response, actually. Those three go together. I don't mean to brush them. They're very important, and we have gone through them with administration, but they're all very clear around that kind of emergency or a health challenge that we're trying to work with. Student records management is a rather technical AP. It covers quite a bit, but a clear part of the AP that we needed to edit here because it relates to how we maintain the integrity of a student record, and that is our work within PowerSchool, our work that gets uploaded to PASSI. So when people talk about a request to have a different pronoun or a different name that could be gender aligned, we needed to capture it here because this is what we ensure the accuracy of our student record is. That's all of 520. Uh, 711 is that's welcoming, caring, respectful, inclusive, safe, and healthy environments is the matching AP to the policy 19 now. I know we just changed the number. I was trying. They used to have similar numbers, and anyways, that's something aside. You can see we had to do a little deeper changes here. 711, no, not too much, but there was a change in the immediacy versus supporting. We in Sturgeon Public Schools support formation of gay-straight alliances. We have many and will continue to support, but the language did change from immediacy to that we support them. Big part of that change. 712 had a significant amount of changes. And so what you see here is a rewrite rather than a highlighted change. This also aligns with policy 20 that you've gone through already. Not sure if here you want to, like, are we taking questions at the end of this? Sorry, Superintendent.
This one, the whole reason why this one is rewritten, not if you look and the original one is there of this AP, there is a lot. The only reason we chose to rewrite it is because when you're editing so much, it was getting impossible to read. And you know that, you've seen that when we made a lot of changes. So it was already a very robust AP. So we just had to go through and fine tune some of the things to make sure that the wording aligned. So please don't think that we had to throw the baby out with bathwater here and start from scratch for that reason. It was because when I started tracking changes, I'm like, oh my goodness, the poor public or anybody, our board trying to read over this AP, it's actually easier if you just compare the old to the new, because it just has the changes just to make sure that it's aligned with the new legislation. So I just want to reaffirm that the rewrite does not mean this is all new. It was a very robust AP. It was just changing some of the language, and so it was easier for you to read. That's why we did not keep the track changes copy.
And I would just further point out, this is one of the APs that also talks on library, also talks name and pronoun, and also talks the fairness in sport, even though each of those is captured in another AP. Like the names and pronouns as part of the student record in 520. The sport, you'll hear that later as we have an athletics AP as well. So, but this already had, this is one of the examples of, we already referenced each of those ideas in this AP. So we edited this AP as well. So it's in more than one place. And then I believe what we see next, if you're following through with the PDF, that's what it was. That's the original, and then a rewrite. That's, so I won't go through that right now. Comprehensive school health actually isn't changed too much, except to ensure that if through counseling wellness plans, we are capturing anything like preferred names, that we're just following regulation. So it's more.
Deputy, can we interrupt the question? Trustee Buga?
Sorry, just curious, in 8.5, when it refers to partnering with community and health service providers to promote access to service, all information gathered through mental health and wellness supports shall be documented and managed. Is that the school division is then responsible for capturing information gathered through an external partnership, through like an outside resource to mental health? Because I can't imagine that we can follow that.
Superintendent Warren?
So this is where our counselors are not psychologists. This is one example.
Right.
So when our counselors are referring to a psychologist, etc., sometimes there may be information, but we're connecting to, but a parent might say, you know, to this person, maybe you want to talk to the school, you could talk to that. But a main thing on here, if you think of our CASA classrooms, this is exactly this, because they are HS and they are PIPA. And it was very challenging because in those situations, you have very strict agreements, right? So you have to sign this agreement. How do we do this? But how do we ensure that our, you look at our records, you can see it's very strict. We have to be very careful with all, again, we want to protect people with their identity, etc. But we have to, again, how do we work with Alberta Health Services, right? So it's ensuring that we actually have that we are following all the legislative on both sides. If it's not the same legislation, so if HHS is PIPA, what are we doing? How do we align that? And it's no different. We have our VITRA. We have that signed. We are working with emergency response. So if it's certain information, the only way you can share that is ensuring we have signed up, like the legislation is there to protect both sides, because in VITRA, we are working with our emergency response teams, etc. And again, they have different powers than we do, but we all have to ensure at every step that we are protecting information and following the right legislation.
May I?
Trustee Buga?
So for clarification, if a student were to talk to the school counselor, the counselor refers then to a psychologist, would we need the psychologist to report back to us and then we would have to keep that in record?
No. And so all of that, if you want to spend some time and look at all that processes, our counselors, again, even notes people take, just like you said for FOIP,
Once,
they're very careful, very
Okay.
careful what's documented, what's shared. No, that would not be the case, that
Okay.
it would be there. But it's making sure that how we document, we also have to be very careful, and what we share. So I will also give the example, if you remember when CUME files were all paper. If another student, if we were packing it up, another school, we were a division now, they were sending that CUME file, we had to go through that CUME file to make sure what was being passed on as information. So that's how we have to make sure that, you know, it's an example. It's not this statement because this is community and health service, right? But I will use CASA as a prime example when we're doing that, because this one we have to be very, very careful to make sure we're meeting the legislative requirements for protection of privacy that we follow and in NHS in order to do what's best for the child.
okay, thank you.
Deputy Superintendent?
Thank you. And I just want to add to that. I'm taking that as I'm putting a note that we might need clarity, because the conversation was great, but we want people to be able to read this without the need of all that conversation. So I appreciate the comment. Thank you, Trustee. Shall I move on to the next one? 825. Yep. So 825, this is another example. You'll see controversial issues coming up where we may look to combine. This is an AP we already had. And I also want to talk just briefly about opt-in. Make the comment, opt-in is very difficult operations. Opt-in is not how we have done. Before I move on, I want to comment about a bit about opt-in, just to indicate, you know, opt-in is very difficult to operationalize. It's not how we have done in the past. We have honored parent choice with opt-out before and clear information ahead of time. This has been very clear in the legislation. We must now have opt-in. One of the things that we're talking about as administration is next round, how to do that or tie it to registration. The challenge is in legislation, when we have this opt-in, it must be clear that parents can opt in for some or part or all. And so you can imagine when you're trying to do an opt-in with a high school, if you're in comm, there are things you're going to talk about. If you're in Bio 30, there are things you're going to talk about. But if you're in neither of those, there aren't. And so we would have to have an opt-in that would cover the learning outcomes of everything within that grade level. and have a form so dynamic that parents would be able to say yes to this and no to this. So opt-in at registration might be something we can move toward, but actually the first round we brought it to admin, they said, this is a challenge. We're now working with teachers. How deep does this mean? That kind of thing. So we're in it right now, but they actually said, as tough as it is, that very teacher who teaches this course can look at their objectives and with enough notice, which is 30 days, by the way, say, we are going to cover these explicit outcomes. But I just wanted to highlight opt-in is a challenge. We do provide a form. We have allowed this round. Schools are taking that form, but they are adapting it for their needs as long as they cover all of the information in the form, because the form was made against legislation. They can shift it around or add the things that they need specific to their course or specific to their school. We have also approved, because it just says in writing, but we have approved, if it's very clear, this can be an electronic exchange. So they can, a parent can read it electronically and assign their electronic signature to say, I acknowledge this. So even though it says written, it doesn't mandate a bunch of paper. It just mandates a clear process. And the next one is in some ways similar. It's beyond just very focused in human sexuality or health and CALM. But this might be something we might look at later about trying to address both of these together. One of the challenges, oh, that'll come more in any questions to this, AP? Okay. Learning material selection relates to the ministerial order on standards for school libraries. And this is where I could pause a little bit to try to define the difference between, sexually explicit content. This is content that describes sexual acts in detail or story setting that is not aligned with a curricular objective or curricular outcome, and that has no place in our libraries. Non-explicit sexual content, though, could be content like I use Bio 30 as an example because I was a Bio 30 teacher. That content is very detailed. But it's very informational. It is not part of a story narrative or how else I could explain that. But that kind of material can only be available starting in grade 10. Now again, sorry, this material again is something that like a child could go in and take out a Bio 30 textbook from a library. Remember that we do need to have approved by the minister but non-sexual. When we talk about health, when we talk about puberty, we'll still need to talk to our students about that. And that material will still be in our schools, but that material will not be free grab on the library shelves. That's the distinction we're trying to make with our teachers and our principals. So this guides that, how our collections are going to be. One of the challenges I will say right now, I believe our superintendent related to that is, how do we operationalize this? We actually know what's in our library content. That's good. We have insignias or software, like we track the books that come in, they get put in our system. We know what's in our libraries. Our classroom libraries, I want to say right now, we know they're good because our teachers are professionals and they have brought in the proper resources. But the government is now asking us to demonstrate that, to say what is in classroom libraries. So we will need some time to operationalize that. We are saying we are complying, but I'm telling you right now, we're working on it, if I may.
Trustee Buga.
Sorry, this one gets me a little bit. First off, the amount of work in order to do this, I hope that our provincial government, who is offering these ministerial orders about changes to the opt-in and the library content, all that kind of stuff, understands the increase in staff hours that this is going to take, and that they're funding us appropriately to make sure that our staff has capacity to do so. Beyond that, okay, I'm going to go from what I've heard from the news releases and from our elected MLAs and our premier and I'm a bit confused. Things like hand holding, kissing, those have been put as not appropriate for children. But pretty much most, YA junior chapter books are often coming of age books. They're narratives, they're very common. First kisses is a common one for young teens. Like, this is in their stories because it is reality. And if that is not the topic of the book, that is not going to be in any write-up of the book, that is going to be near impossible without reading every single piece of literature in our schools to see if somebody held hands in that book. I'm not sure that it is feasible as a librarian myself to know the content of every book, because they are categorized and they have MARC records and they have all of these subjects in them, but certainly not things that are in passing. And I don't think we can possibly expect to have every instance of that out of our schools. There would be nothing on the shelf, quite honestly. So I don't know what my question was. Sorry.
Well, my question is, yeah, I was about to say that. What is the timeline? Like, how long do we have to actually operationalize any of this? Superintendent Warren.
Well, when you say operationalize, we're sure there's going to be bumps along the way. And so our goal is, and this is a challenging one right now, because as Trustee Bucca said, we are trying to figure out how do we support our schools. So this isn't so overwhelming. There are a few details when you talk about just the embedded content, it's referred to kind of lightly in ways, but we don't know what that means. We will do our best, but are we to say that it'll be done as of tomorrow? No, it is our goal to get this up and going and to look at that. And I believe, is it actually finalized, everything ready to go? Is it January? Mr. Conrad, I should have shown, sorry, I shouldn't put you on the spot. I'm looking at the bill when it says, because again, as I will just remind the board, especially Bill 51, the Education Act is not updated yet. So you have to go back and forth between the ministerial order looking. So we are going to try our best. As of right now, I actually don't know if I have an answer to that, because we are still trying to figure out logistically how and what we are going to be doing. But again, these are in place. It's been communicated to our principals and we're looking at it. I will let Mr. Conrad look, but I can't remember the library one. I think it's January. Is it January 1st, 2026?
Yep, correct. January.
Trustee Pequin has a question.
I don't have a question. I have some comments. This admin team, thank you so much for all of the work to try and get all of these changes just into our admin procedures that have come fast and hard and heavy from legislation and ministerial orders. It's been a huge undertaking where everything is being touched and it's being prescribed through ministerial orders and legislation. Good job getting it in there, because this is a lot of things that changes the very core of our education and how it has run. So, I don't know.
Deputy or Superintendent, I have one more question regarding the learning materials. And maybe I don't know, now I'm confused, so I'm just going to ask it. As a parent of a child who often read well above his age grade, I often bought books for him. Does the ministerial order on subject matter apply to things that students bring into the school? Like, I often read stuff after Jack read it and I was like, well, that was spicy. So I'm not sure. I know we can only control what we can
control. Did
control.
not get checked out of our libraries
Okay.
and they're say that they're on the restricted list. We cannot control what,
Okay, that's
again,
what I
and everything
thought.
else.
I thought.
But if it came off our shelves and it was not approved, then
Yeah.
we'd be
Yeah.
having to look at,
Okay,
yes.
that's
No,
actually what I
we
was
can't
hoping.
control
that-
outside,
Okay, thanks.
but it's a good question.
Please continue, Deputy. Oh,
Thank you.
wait,
Oh,
Trustee Pequin has one more.
Are we? This at-home learning. So as we all know, like Redwater shifted to schools closed, not even at-home learning. Can you, these are new, so we would have had to have, like, can you explain what we would have had to do, or like, help me?
No, I appreciate that. So I'm just gonna, so there's two things here because you're talking to the exemption to in-person learning regulation. That's part of the at-home learning, so we've captured that. So I will just remind the board that we'll use the fire as a perfect example. If you have to close the schools due to an emergency like that, if you are going to be trying to offer an online version of school to students, if it's after like 3 days and then you, right, then you have to get approval from the minister because you're actually getting an exemption to the in-person learning. This is a follow-up of that because that was already out there. This is just even going even farther. So this is based on the new bills that came out as well, but that exemption to in-person learning regulation is in place. And it's because as you read these, it's to ensure, the government wants to ensure that there's an in-person option, that boards are not just making a decision to close and not offer. And if you are offering online, then how? Because again, to make sure it's inclusive, then you have to go through that process. So that's why for the fire, we did not have to, because we did not provide an online option. If we had kept it closed for longer, we would have had to make decisions. Do we move all those kids to like a different school to try to give them online, in-person learning as well? That's where that regulation comes into play, is when and how you have to have the option for in-person learning. That's what it's requiring. But that's still in place, the exemption to in-person learning, and it's captured here as well.
Deputy Superintendent, I think you can continue.
I had a follow-up comment though on the question of how do we know when the content of material focuses on something of that nature and not incidentally? And this is a little bit how we talk about in our classrooms. When we know a learning objective, we know a conversation, we know something coming up is going to touch on gender identity, sexuality, we will inform 30 days in advance. This is going to happen. Do you want your child to be a part of it? But there will still be incidental conversations in our classrooms that will be handled respectfully, and we're moving back into the core learning at hand. My comment here about library collections relates to the next one we're going to look at, which is a challenge to learning resources. Anything that our librarians and our teachers know are explicit in nature, we will be moving out of the collections and so on. But if there may be some incidental conversation in there, at this moment, it's as an incidental conversation in a classroom. However, there is this next one, 835, which is anyone, could be staff, could be parents. There's a clear process where they can bring forward and say, this should not be in your collection, and this is why. And then this is how we're going to handle that, how we're going to review it, the timelines we're going to review it, and the escalation process. So we will absolutely follow the intent going in, but there will be some that will have to work together in community, staff and parents too. Student conduct actually wasn't changed that much. Trying to think, aside from access to information, if we even did in the end significant, I don't think so. So we put it here, but I'm looking at it and we must have been fairly well aligned. Extracurricular activities in athletics. Oh, sorry, was there a comment?
No, it's just me adding, it was just because we needed to update the policy numbers. It was very minor to our student code conduct, yes.
So the extracurricular athletics, again, remember it was at 712 that does touch on this, as 712 also touches on 520 student record, but this is meant to be the more robust when we talk about extracurricular athletics. So this captures our impression of everything from the Fairness and Safety Act. It also captures a few things unique to Sturgeon. So you'll see some of the ISC work. which is our junior high leagues and how they work. And in some divisions, they have a central office athletic director or someone because their school are large enough to do that, but we have athletic directors in schools. So this captures some current practice that we needed to capture in AP, but then definitely the practice of ensuring that when we have a female-only league, starting in after age 12, so 13, U13 and up, that there is a recognition somewhere in paper or a written process that the parent says, my child meets the gender requirements to compete in this league, which is female sex at birth for female leagues. I think I've reached the end of the lengthy list of APs. I want to end where I started, and the superintendent said the intent was to look at all our current APs and to edit them to be in line with legislation. Then, if there were still holes, put in the minimum number of new APs to align with that practice. Now we have to get back into the work of working with our school and staff. Maybe we need to simplify, maybe we need to make it clearer for our schools, but we wanted to capture our legislative responsibility. Prepared to take more questions.
Super trustee Buga, sorry.
Super trustee Buga.
Super trustee Buga.
I appreciate the huge amount of work and the very short timeline. These announcements have been made from the province. Often they are made without any formal backing, and then we wait for weeks or months until we see some sort of legislation or the ministerial order. As was mentioned, the Education Act has yet to be updated with a lot of these things, so we're still trying our very best to comply with the province as these things come out. And I am grateful that I only had to read these and not actually go through and make the changes, because even that, trying to understand them, was a lot of work. Just to see where we were, where we're going, and how we're preserving the integrity of Sturgeon values and Sturgeon School Division while making sure that we are aligned with the government of the day, as it were. And I new appreciation for how fast things change. And we're a board of 7. We're here for 4 years, maybe more. But you guys are the ones that have to make sure that there's this continuity that continues so that our students are protected and they're well educated and supported through all of this. So thank you. That's a huge amount of work.
Thank you, trustee Buga. Seeing no other comments, I'm going to move to number 9, reports from trustees, standing committees, starting with my report. Given that this is the first meeting we've had since June 18th, just a couple of highlights is end of last school year's awards at both Namao and Guthrie, as well as the Sturgeon Composite High School graduation. I also attended the TIBA lockout engagement session earlier this week. It was as expected. The only other thing I wanted to mention, and I'm looking to the board for some guidance, is the end of June, or maybe it was the beginning of June, we had requested a letter to be drafted for ministers Nicolaides, LaGrange, and Wilson regarding interministerial collaboration for health education, mental health, and addictions. We have the draft in our package today. Oh,
You got to
this is
respond back.
this is the
This
one.
The one you sent,
This is the one I sent. Sorry. Where's the one that we drafted?
because it's not in the packet.
Oh.
We're gonna discuss it.
Okay.
But you
We-
did get a response.
We did get a response from back from this letter. What I wanted to ask about was, and I wish I'd printed it now. I thought we'd
Thank
be
you.
there.
Dropping it.
No, it's okay. Well, you can remind us what's in it,
Mhm.
because I think my question to the board was, it's ready to go, the draft letter that we have. I feel like it might be a bad timing to send it right now. given what the government is currently working with. I think it would get lost in the shuffle. I don't think this is the best time, but I'd like Shauna to give us all a bit of a reminder.
Sure, I'll just remind the board, so that was the letter that the board sent on June 19th, and Minister Nicolaides did respond
Yeah,
back to the board
sorry.
chair, which the board chair did forward on to you. In June, but again, it's difficult because we have many people who have their hands in it they do go on holiday. So we started drafting going, okay, so if we send this letter, what would it look like to operationalize it, to see with the PCN restructure into Primary Care Alberta, if there was a way to actually remove the silos and actually action some of the cross-ministerial work, because I know even with the Primary Care Alberta restructure, it's quite a big change. And if you've looked at our zone where we will land, it's huge. It goes all the way to BC, Saskatchewan border. I think it goes up past a little bit past Jasper, but it goes down below Lake Leduc, and we're in there, and it's the city of Edmonton as well. So it's much large. Like they have the regions are bigger when they're with this restructure as they bring the regional areas back. So what we did was I was working with the same people that we worked with on this one, drafting this to the board for some recommendations. Over the summer, it was difficult. In July, I could not connect to the same people, including our doctor we've been working with in Calgary. But we've been working alongside Parkland because they've had a form of this that's actually going really well. They've been working with, they've actually kind of restructured an RCSD type model, but it's very interesting. It's been quite successful. So we were looking at what would it look like to operationalize, because we wanted to give examples if the board was to draft a second letter. We know that there's a lot of hiring freezes in that area. Again, this is not our area, this is health. So we just didn't know it was the right time, but we have drafted one. I was just asking the board chair, maybe in September, we bring it back to that cow as we get a little bit more information. Because right now, and we're trying to get those players back in some meetings to talk, but as the board chair just alluded to, there's a lot going on right now provincially, and so we're just not sure it was the right time, but we have drafted it. It's not finalized. I think it's still missing some points because we actually include like a graphic where we make recommendations of which positions will be covered where. But we just didn't know what the board felt. And so, but we can, I can get the draft to the chair. She can then send it out to you early and you can make a decision before the September public board. I was hoping maybe we could have one ready for today, but it's just been, there's just been a lot of other things we've been dealing with, but that's basically, it's a follow-up letter to this, just a little more operational ideas coming from ground level up that we've received from other people we've reached out to. So
Yeah.
I apologize because I don't think you and I touched base before.
Well, and I actually thought more than having the letter that we sent, it would have been good to have the response that we received back. But the other part of it was the secondary letter right now would be an inappropriate time to send it, is what I'm thinking, just based on what has all been going on this week and probably going to be continuing next week. So I wanted to just see if you guys all agreed with me, and it's not ready yet anyhow, but I think we hold on to it until we get to a point where they're able to give it the attention it deserves. Trustee Pequin.
Did you forward us the response from the government to our letter? And
I thought it did. Do you want me to?
I
Email.
very well might have missed it, especially with the transition between
Okay.
Yeah, and
summer and all of the things. So if we could just
I didn't receive it directly either. It came from here, so I assumed.
send it.
Yeah,
That
of
would
course.
be great.
Trustee Murray Elliott.
Just a couple of quick questions. First, can you paraphrase their response? Was it positive, negative?
It's always
Neutral.
positive from Minister Nicolaides. He's always happy to hear from us. And then he went on to express how many things the government has put in place that answers our questions and or in response to our concerns, and kind of trailed off like that. So it didn't really answer anything rather than him saying, well, we put the this program in place and this funding is available for that. The problem is we all know that those monies are tied to very specific things. So yes, you answered the little niche question over here, but the bigger issue is this. So, I mean, he's always very kind and thoughtful in his response, and I believe that he truly does hear what we're saying and want to be useful and like helpful in finding a solution, but he has his hands tied as well. I mean, there's only so much he can do.
And further to that, we know that they're dealing with issues. However, I agree that they do listen, they do listen to what we hear, and if we can give them concrete steps, like I think that would give them a really good path to look at rather than them having to imagine what it all looks like. And I think a good example of that is recently I read how they had pushed back some of the early learning assessments that are being done by a week. I thought that was great. And I can't help but think it's due to listening to the input from the divisions that the timing was really rough on our teachers and our divisions. So I feel somewhat confident that they are listening to us, in which case, you know, the sooner the better we get it in, especially if we have concrete forward motion options. However, with what is going on, it might be, I would say there's no rush in getting
Yeah.
that next letter together.
Why don't we leave it till the next committee of the whole or public board meeting to discuss it. It's not ready to go anyways. Operationally, it just didn't fit into the timing, but yes, we'll get if the response wasn't received by everybody, we'll make sure it goes out again. We'll go around the table, starting with Trustee Murray Elliott for reports.
I apologize, I did not submit a written report. And so I will give a verbal report, which is, I have nothing to report.
Thank you so much, Trustee Murray Elliott. Trustee Pequin.
It was a great summer.
Thank you. Trustee Dwyer.
Same.
Wonderful, thank you. Trustee Gibbons.
I did not do anything in the month of July. I met with the new principal and vice principal at Gibbons School last week, just to welcome them to the community and to the school. Well, Principal Pazuk is coming back to the school, but not as a teacher, as a principal. So yeah, that was it.
Trustee Buga, can I sneak in one thing that I missed that I did? I, in the month of July, read Robert's Rules for Dummies. It was very dry. So, but it was for dummies, so I appreciate it. Trustee Buga.
Unsurprisingly, I read the Essential School Board Handbook, which was actually very good. It's an older publication, but it was very good. So I read a couple governance books, and I went through, all the policies and our handbook, kind of reformatted it into something that I think was a little bit more cohesive. So I spent a lot of time in our Google Drive knowing my way around. So other than that, I did also attend the TIBA meeting online as an observer, along with Trustee Pequin and was Shauna on there? Sean
Which one,
Nicholson
Tina?
was. Yeah, you were on there.
Yep.
So
Lisa and Sean and I.
trying to better understand where we sit, and the process of negotiations in education in this province is actually, it's quite complex. And as a trustee, I sat on the local ATA negotiation committee previously and currently, I believe. But understanding the nuances of provincial negotiation is a lot to understand. And I think it's really important that trustees, at the very least, be aware of how little power we have Thanks.
Just maybe for our public who are listening, it was a lockout engagement session, and as the president of the ATA, Jason Schilling, has said through interviews and in writing, this lockout, the TIBA board applying for a lockout is the equivalent of the ATA applying for their strike vote. And so this is part of the negotiation process of both the government and ATA. And so the entire presentation was for trustees to understand that. So just so we're clear. Okay. Oh, yes, Trustee Gibbons.
Sorry, it just came to me, and so I'm gonna make the assumption that you didn't get a chance to have an in-person meeting with the Minister of Education.
Correct.
And chances of you getting one in September probably slim, right?
I would actually venture slim to none.
So I wonder if it wouldn't be a bad idea to leave, I don't know if direction is the right word, with senior admin, that when the new board comes in and whoever that chair is, letting them know that, maybe we should try to get in with the Minister of Education.
Mhm. Yeah,
Maybe he'll be
absolutely.
free in November.
Could always snag him at the ASBA conference. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the committee of the whole report is in the package for everybody. I'm assuming there's no questions or comments regarding that. We're gonna move 10 reports from special committees, task groups. The ASBA representative, anything to report? Trustee Gibbons?
So we met in June. I believe it was after our public board meeting. So I forwarded the draft minutes or the minutes to everybody. They didn't meet through the summer, and we do have a meeting in September. And I just have to find it in my calendar to find out what Friday that is. But this year they are having a September meeting.
Okay.
So I won't have anything till September to tell you.
Thank you. PSBAA representative, Trustee Murray Elliott.
Yeah, I wasn't sure being the backup on this, but all I have is I printed off there was a Public School Boards Council meeting this summer in Red Deer, so I printed off a summary of that. For some reason, my printer gave me a few extra copies. If anyone wants one, they're free to have it. I'll just give you a quick highlight. The 2026 budget was approved in principle and will be presented at the AGM in November. There were some bylaw amendments that were approved in principle and will again be presented at the AGM. And some things that they talked about at that committee meeting. Also, a reminder to register for the fall conference and AGM as soon as possible, which is in November. So that sounds a bit tricky to me. I don't know what would happen if you registered and then didn't run again or something. But anyways, yeah, so if anyone wants a copy of that, I have some extras. Any questions on yes? And just a final thing, I hope, I'm not sure what the new board will look like, but I hope if we lose some of our PSBAA cheerleaders from this board, I hope the new board will also see the value in this organization because it mirrors a lot of the issues that we are dealing with, and it is very member driven. It's refreshing in that respect, and I would highly recommend that this division remains a member of that board, of that organization.
I strongly second that sentiment. Trustee Buka?
Are you able to forward the PSBAA minutes? Are they available on their website? I don't want a hard copy though, but I'll find it. Thanks.
Rotary report, Trustee Dwyer?
Yeah, thank you. It's kind of exciting. This morning, a student from grade 12, student going into grade 12 from the high school spoke at the Rotaries. We had sponsored her to go to the Human Rights Center in Winnipeg. She's on her Interact. And she spoke to this morning to that whole, we actually send a student every year, every summer. And she spoke on that experience and well spoken. And it was very interesting to hear about her experience and meeting lots of other students from all over. But another thing too that Rotary is looking at here, the whole Rotary International is trying to bring back the student exchange in a little bit more of a stronger way. It used to be a very strong program. And a lot of people, that we know have experienced in it. So there's been some meetings on that. And we as Morinville Sturgeon Rotary are going to look at it again here. We looked at it a few years ago, but it was about 40 grand to sponsor that. And now it's down to about 12 with some other ways of financing through international, Rotary International. But so we're going to start looking at that again. It's a $12,000 budget. And one of the bigger things is host houses, host families. That's become a little bit hard to do and get. So it's a challenge for us, but anyways, Rotary's looking strongly at that. And I think it's great that we got a strong Interact group, and that whole student exchange program is going to hopefully come to attrition there, and it happens. And I think the way the members are talking right now, I think it will be a strong possibility that it happens again. So those are a couple things come out of Rotary. There's been lots of stuff with the Interact's just a great group. Even through the summer, they helped with a few projects, and very good volunteers and trying to better the community. So we're very lucky in that group. And Darwin Cripps that
Mr. Cripps?
somebody else at the high school gets quite involved, and I think they should be recognized for that in some fashion because they do great work.
Trustee Pequin?
Comment on Rotary, like they can do amazing things. My cousin's kid is in Austria right now on an 11-month exchange for the Rotary Club of West Loch. So, I mean, the partnership with Rotary and Sturgeon, Rotary and students is amazing what that does. So I love that you attend and that our students are being a part of it. And yeah, just shout out to Rotary.
And think about this. Just think about this. A student gets up in front of, I bet there was 40 of us this morning. Leaders in the community, businessmen, all that stuff, and just gets up front and starts talking. That's so powerful, and so builds that leadership, right? There's some good things going on, and it's just getting better all the time. So I'm going to be a real promoter of this student exchange. So we'll see where it goes, but that'll be huge for one of our students.
Yeah, Sturgeon Public is so fortunate to have such a strong relationship with Rotary. I don't care who's sitting around this table in 2 months. We just have to find a way to keep that connection as strong as it is. So
and another important part of it, these students are getting in front of businessmen for careers, for all kinds of things in the future. And there's some stuff that's maybe not seen. You got to bring it out, but
and it fits into our building community. Like the kids stay in the community when they have connection to the community. So okay. Chamber of Commerce meetings, I will just say that St. Albert's actually having a good one on September 10th, but we will all be here. So we will be missing the Inclusion Alberta presentation. So I'm sad about that, but I've asked actually one of my colleagues at work if she would attend and bring back information. Anybody else have chamber meetings? Community Services Advisory Board, I believe, does not meet during the summer. Is that correct? I
That's
think I heard that at the end. Yeah, okay. So then we won't have a report there. No unfinished business. Per our policy change last month, I confirmed that there were no questions prepared for the board prior to the meeting. So with that being said, I would like to ask for a motion to go in camera, please. Certainly you can.
Okay, quick question. When I was reading the communications report and I got to the part about our collegiate, it just sounded amazing and it brought up so many questions. And I would like to spend a lot of time hearing about this wonderful new thing that came in at the end of last year with funding at the last minute, and it's all very hazy to me. So just wondering if we'll be getting a bit of a report on that in the near future.
Superintendent Warren.
Yes, and the reason why you haven't received a lot is because the funding and everything was announced so late. Everything we're offering right now, we continue to offer when it comes to flight school. The actual collegiate part will not be happening until second semester in February because it was impossible to action. So that's why you haven't got an update. We are very fortunate with our positive relationship, whether it's between Elevate or Edmonton Airports. They've been unbelievable. So there's wonderful things that are coming, but that's the whole reason why we're not reporting on it is because right now we're also trying to finalize because we didn't get the money till very late and there was no way to action that for the first semester. So now we're just making sure we have everything in order so that we can talk about it a little more because actually we even had CBC actually reached out to ask about it and it was kind of sad because the funding just came too late for us to get it going right away. So we're getting there, but there will be the new board we'll get to appreciate. We'll get all that because we'll get to bring more as we get that more finalized to action for semester 2.
Could I ask for a motion to go in camera?